Trust Your Struggle is a place of inspiration. We have these conversations with individuals about their monumental struggles that they've had in their life, what they've done to overcome them, how these struggles and what they've done have kind of helped define who they are today. On this episode, I speak with John. He started his career by doing branding, packaging, and photography. He was also a professional YoYoer who traveled around the world performing some crazy tricks. You might even be able to find some of those on YouTube. The real struggle set in once him and his wife were about to have their first kid and not really having a plan or a safety net set in place. On top of that, his wife got into a bad car accident, leaving them with only one car and a scooter for him to get around in. But he's learned that there are things that inspire you and things that drive you. Hope you enjoy.
My name is John Huber. I am a designer. I've worked in print, packaging, branding, and I'm currently working on digital design for digital products. So,
and how long have you been doing design for?
Been designing total for about, I'd say my career since college is about 20 years. And then I'd say specifically doing what I'm doing right now, about the last seven years or so. And then been doing the photography part of what I've been doing. Forgot to mention that, but I've been doing that for about 13 years now. So, and then it goes all the way back into the 90s if you count high school. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you always known that this is what you wanted to do, or is it something that you kind of fell into?
I think once I knew that it was a thing, right? So I always knew that art could be a thing, right? That could be a career. I knew that, drawing, I knew adults could do that, right? But I think once I knew what design was as a career, I just got more and more interested in it, I'd say, honestly, I didn't even really have a full grasp on everything that, I guess entails if someone was to ask what I do, I think it took me a long time to kind of figure that out and even just get my head around that. I remember in college, people would say what do you want to do after college? I'd be like, be a graphic designer. And I'd be like, well, what kind? And I'd be like, I don't know, but kind, right? So,
right.
I'd say even when I started, I feel like I barely knew what the hell I was, getting into. So.
And how did you finally discover your niche?
Oh man. So I have an older brother. He's 5 years older than me, and he had introduced me to what he was doing early on. So I started taking classes in high school, a graphic design VTech class, right? And then in college, kind of got exposed to a lot of things. Went to the Art Institute of Phoenix. And I picked that school because it went art first, right? We learned craft and design outside of the software and everything kind of first, and those design principles. And then it's funny, I didn't set out to do one kind of thing, but I eventually kind of gravitated and things started naturally steering in the direction that I kind of wanted to go anyway, right? When I started, I was just doing a really typical in-house marketing job. I worked there for about 5 months. And then after that, I wouldn't say I took a break from design, but I took an opportunity to do something super weird. I had an opportunity to go be a professional yo-yoer overseas. So I did that for a really short amount of time. It was only a couple months. But when I came back, I started working in a print shop, and then I was doing kind of not really glamorous stuff, but then I was working in an apparel company doing embroidery and screen print and logo designs. And it was just heavy into that. And then some layout for hang tags and things like that. I got the company sort of set up on a photography department for expanding how they were selling their apparel and stuff like that.
Hold on.
I'd say that.
What exactly is a professional yo-yoer then?
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, I kind of breezed over that one.
You're just and I was a professional yo-yoer and I traveled around for a while, but I don't think a lot of people really know exactly what's all involved with that. Is that a competitive sport sort of thing?
Kind of, yeah. So what I was doing, so this was the late 90s, right? And obviously the sport and the art has changed over the years to where a professional yo-yoer now would probably be doing a lot more competing, some traveling, and then probably have like a really big online social media presence, making videos and things like that. Back then it was a lot more live performances. So I would compete locally and I'd compete in the US and everything. But when I went to go on tour, it was just live performances. So it was actually British Petroleum, the gasoline gas station.
Oh, BP, yeah.
BP, yeah, man, BP. Hey, before everything went south with dumping stuff into the ocean, they hired they were carrying the yo-yos, and they hired like an advertising agency who was like, hey, we're going to sell these yo-yos by hiring these professionals who are connected to the company they buy the yo-yos from. So they brought us over and then made like quasi stars out of us. We did radio interviews, and one of the guys I was
sign autographs.
I had bodyguards. I signed autographs. I had a driver.
Check this out. This is amazing right now.
There was a
talk about a struggle, but like this is too good not to talk about right now.
Yeah, right. No, it was definitely surreal, right? I was 19, passing as 15, and or no, sorry, no wait, I was 21, passing as 15, right? So and they did actually like pass it. I was like a teenager, right? So I was out there with my bleached tips and my shants, right? So there was three of us, and yeah, we would do shows like 12 hours a day. We'd go to the mall, and then we ran a contest. That was the key part, right? There was a contest that people came out for, and there was a structure to it. And by the end of the thing, we crowned a winner of the Singapore contest and the Malaysia contest. So
nice, dude. That's so rad. What a great experience,
Oh, it's so fun. I couldn't pass it up. So yeah. So I worked that first job for like 5 months, and it was like, I'm gonna go do this thing.
You gotta go tour the world for a little bit and spin some yo-yos around, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Do a little, what is it called, the sleeping dog or something like that?
Yeah, around the world, walk the dog, all that good stuff.
Walk the dog, that's right. Yeah. Exactly. And you were saying like your brother got you into it. So is your brother like really into art and design? And do you have any other siblings?
I do, yeah. I have a twin sister. She definitely leans more on the art side than the design side. Yeah, so I have a twin sister. She is a writer, and she draws and paints and things like that. And then my brother is a graphic designer. And I think, yeah, when he introduced it to me, I mean, he was like high school going into college, right? So I was like 8th grade or something like that. And he was just showing me like what he was kind of doing. And then it was starting to connect. I'm like, oh, wow, that's how those things get made, right? And this was around the time where there was still obviously like some, non-digital components to graphic design, right? So there was a lot of hand stuff too, but I was seeing firsthand how the computer was kind of playing into it and everything.
Yeah, dude. I remember your brother was like really big into BMX.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, it's so funny. So my brother was really good at BMX. I got into BMX. I sucked at BMX. I always got third. So I mean, he introduced me to skateboarding. For part of our childhood, we were in San Diego in the 80s. So we had it was obviously people, story's the same, right? Everybody still idolizes Tony Hawk, right? But like to be exposed to those, like that art and those skateboard decks and that kind of stuff in California and the skate scene and all that, and then have an older brother to look up to who was into both those things, skating, and then when we moved to Arizona, he got into BMX. And then and it's funny too, when I went into the Art Institute, I tried to do animation first to just try to deviate somewhat from the path, right? And just be like, but I ended up, steering back to graphic design.
That's crazy. And is your brother still doing that stuff too? Is he still doing graphic design? That's cool.
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah, he's still doing it. He's an art director at. We're both in healthcare now, ironically. So
Crazy.
He works at a nonprofit arm of a healthcare company, and I am in the corporate like digital product department of another healthcare company. So yeah. So
That's
yeah, he
rad.
was always like screen printing shirts, and I was always watching that. Like he was doing BMX and like making shirts for whatever he was involved in with BMX. So
Nice. Were you guys pretty tight growing up?
yeah, I would say yeah. He taught me a lot, man. I mean, taught me, like I said, like got me introduced into design, showed me how to throw my first yo-yo. So
Oh
but
shit,
yeah,
really?
we were tight. And as far as older brothers go too, he was like super cool. You know, people have that like older brother like, you know, kicks their ass or picks on them or whatever, and there really wasn't much of that, you know. And all his friends were like cool, and we had a half pipe in our backyard for a while because him and his friends like built it, and our
I remember
stepdad, like
that.
our parents were like, you know, cool with that and everything. So yeah. So the
Yeah,
siblings,
so I remember like
it was a good scene.
John and I remember the half pipe. So John and I go way back to I think maybe elementary school or something like that. Like
Yeah, either elementary school or middle school.
yeah, exactly. So I remember going over there and just seeing all of your older brother friends and him like just shred on that. It was really crazy. So and then I got inspired and built like the little quarter pipe on the side of my house afterwards.
Yeah. Yep.
That was a lot of fun.
Nice.
But and so now, and how long you been? So now, with your career and where you're at, you're doing the digital product design. How long have you been into that realm?
Yeah. So so after that apparel company, I had started my own business, and then it was kind of a gradual transition, right? So while I was doing client work, so I went from in-house, you know, it kind of came back around that yo-yo thing. I got a client that I was doing during my apparel job, and I started doing product packaging for the yo-yos and things like that. So, but it started out with like a logo and packaging, and then catalogs, photography for the catalog. So it was really cool because I got to learn all that. And then I did several iterations of their website, you know, like in 2003, I did like a really like just what would be now like terrible website, right? And then over the years we had to
Was it in
redesign.
Flash?
No, it was in.
Okay.
I think I had done it up in Image Ready.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Just like it was all sliced up, like it was just like a landing page, right? That was like my first one that I had done for them, and then I was starting to get a little bit more digital stuff, you know, with doing some of the digital things for them, but it wasn't until sort of kind of the end of I went to work with them even in-house for a couple years, contracted kind of on site, but that kind of brings us to like 2012 or somewhere around there. And that's when.
Now, did you learn like all this stuff on the job, like all these different skill sets while you were like working there? Were you just like, yeah, I can do that? And
kind of,
like,
yeah. So the first like the packaging thing was like I learned as the art institute how to like make we had one project that was like manually making a box, right, with even marker paper and like hand die cutting it out. And that was huge for me, prototyping packaging at home, because I'd take like a back butter knife and score it, and I'd get it the exact, you know, I'd do it all up in Illustrator. But as far as like, I learned a lot. I learned it all from like practice and everything. Obviously, like had some schooling in it, right? Everything I learned about screen print, I learned from like talking to my brother years ago, but then also working at the apparel company and dealing with like, I was not actually like screen printing. It was more of a little bit bigger of a corporate operation, but dealing with the vendor and like getting the pre-press files right for him and all that kind of stuff. And then, but then as things went on and things got more digital, that's when I really got into really trying to, that's when I kind of like was really seeking out more opportunities that were going to go in that direction.
Did you that because you saw more like security or like a future in that, or was it just something that interests you?
Both, but definitely, I'll be honest, it was watching my field just change over the years, right? I was able to kind of identify early on, like there's the futures in that, right? Or there is a good future in that, right? Everybody, you know, there's over the 20 years, I've heard all kinds of things, right? Of like, print is dead. It's like, no, it's not dead. It's just different. You can't do the cheap, shitty printing anymore. Now people want printing and packaging. You get to do more of the premium stuff. When somebody's going to make like a really dope album cover, they don't just need CD cover after CD cover. They need that really special thing. So there's less room for people to maybe in print design, but the quality of it's still there and the demand is still there, right? Also heard things like, well, you have to learn to code if you're going to be a designer. Like it's done. We've all got to learn how to code or we're just going to starve to death, right? So I kind of waffle back and forth between maybe having that opinion, but then realizing I'm like, no, I'm going to stick to what I'm good at. And then I'm going to, you don't have to learn how to code if you are really good at the other stuff you do, right? And then now I've had enough perspective to see that those were just opinions and those were just kind of ebbs and flows and waves. Now, people aren't necessarily looking for that all-in-one person. You know what I mean? So I think the industry has grown and people are looking for, there's a lot of people trying to save money and try to get that person in one, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely so seeing as it evolved and everything, I definitely was pursuing that not only as just something interesting and new, but yeah, definitely wanted to see where that could take me.
And did you, was there a time in your career where you felt like you wanted to maybe switch careers, or you're like, yeah, I'm done with this because of how everything's changed over the last like 20 years? There's been like so many ups and downs with everything.
No,
that's cool.
No, the industry is definitely like, I've had thoughts like, like what do I want to do, that kind of thing. But first of all, when people ask like, what else would you be doing? I'm like, or what would you do if you weren't a designer? I'd be like, I would be a drummer or a professional yo-yoer. So it's kind of
nice, dude.
So it's not like, oh man, what am I going to do now? I've got cool options, but I'm going to stick with this.
So what about the drumming thing, dude? Like, what's that? Have you always done that since you're a kid?
Honestly, yeah, since I was like 13. So, yeah, I got into, again, it's funny. It was the thing my brother did. I remember when I was really little. And then when I was in like, middle school, I remembered that, and parents dug it out, and my brother was like, "Hey, you've been asking about drums. Do you want this one?" So I got into it, and parents got me lessons and things like that, and all into like punk rock and some grunge, and right, it's the '90s. So yeah, so I played in bands, and I remember myself and Matt here were doing some garage band stuff back in the day a little bit.
Legit garage band, dude. I remember like we used to practice in some dude's like shed or something like that next to his like mobile trailer.
Yeah, I remember we practiced in a few places. Wow, yeah, it's straight up trailer park by the high school. Yep,
it really was. Yeah, and it was like the middle of the summer, so we're just like, all right, dude, we're just gonna get some fans in here. And there was no AC in that room at all. But I think we were on like summer break or something, and we're just like, all right, dude, we just all did band practice in our boxers. This was like before Blink-182.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yep. For sure. So yeah, I mean, that's what I was doing during high school. And then, during the time when I had my small business, doing the freelance design, having the Yo-Yo Factory as the kind of steady client and everything, I had room to like travel and have a band and do shows and things like that, right? And I was doing that, and then music. After that band, we had like an EP, and I'd say I did the most with that band in mid 2000s, somewhere between like 2003 to like 7, around there.
Did you do all the layout for the album?
I did, yeah. I'm the designer and I'm the designer and the drummer, right? So, yeah, t-shirts and things like that, and then other music stuff that I've done. I was in another band a few years later, and then we never made an album or anything, but we were just kind of playing shows and things like that around town. And other than that, playing pretty much the times when I was had more of an open schedule. I was doing like, playing drums at church or playing drums with a band. So.
Cool. Do you still have your kit?
Yep, same one, man. Same one. It's currently in a stack in cases right now. I take good care of it. But we had a son about 5 years ago. So once he got climbing age, they had to come down. So yeah. So.
Do you think you're gonna get him into playing your drums?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like those first like few years of having a kid, like are just especially like going through like job changes and things like that, are just kind of a struggle. I wish I would have been able to have them up the whole time so he could be exposed to music and things like that. I tried a little bit. We actually got the band back together for like one night. had him over, right? Had him like had the other guys like meet my son and everything. But yeah, I definitely want to get to a point where my son is enjoying and seeing the example of me enjoying these different crafts and these different art forms, right, that I do, because that was such a huge thing with like me and my brother and everything. And seeing having that modeled, and then too, he's just like, I'd make like a beat with my hands or something like that as a baby, like when he was a baby, and he would like start dancing to it,
Nice.
and like, so I can tell he's got the rhythm. So.
Yeah, for sure. He's totally into it. Were your how about your parents? Were they into music or art or anything like that? Kind of like how you are with your son?
Kind of. It wasn't really modeled at home. I'd say my mom was definitely creative, and she did a lot of sewing and like craft projects and things like that. So definitely my mom, like, I'm not mom, she definitely like fostered it, right? My stepdad was into music. And then he did encourage me getting into like marching band. That was probably about the extent of where him and I crossed with music, right? And then my parents had divorced when I was 6, so lived with my stepdad for most of my childhood. But my dad, where I was born in Michigan, San Diego, and then Phoenix. So I didn't have that kind of modeled by my dad or anything, but he definitely wasn't opposed to it.
Yeah.
But sorry, yeah. And my dad was more of an engineer. He worked for one of the big automotive companies for a very long time, retired from there. And since I didn't live with him, I don't know anything about cars. See what direction I went, right?
Yeah, exactly. Did he work with that automotive company like pretty much his whole life?
I don't want to say his whole life, but my whole life.
Right, exactly. Yeah, wow,
For
that's
sure.
crazy. That's such a especially in our industry and what we do, like that's such an unheard of thing, is for someone to stick around at one company for that amount of years. It's like the stuff that we do is a lot of people are jumping around from place to place or different disciplines and that sort of thing. So it's kind of like that old school mentality, I think.
It is, yeah. And it's weird because I had some of that ingrained in me. I'm not going to lie, like with the doing work for the yo-yo company, I was doing it, freelancing with my own company and everything. But really, I mean, they were really like, that work was really keeping me going for a long time. I worked with them for like 10 years. And still have the relationship with them. They just don't have the need right now for like a ton of bespoke packaging and branding, right? But yeah. So, I definitely, my early on in my career, I kind of thought, I thought that, kind of thing what my dad did, right? That's how you do it, right? And then we just kind of learned it's not like that. And then for a long time, I was even at a point where I was like, I don't want to have a job. I'm going to do this on my own, right? So,
like freelancing.
Yeah. When I started my company in 2006, I mean, I kept that going I still technically have it, but I had a good 10-year, straight run where that was my main source of income, right?
That's huge to be able to run with it for that amount of time and, still continue doing it or whatever. On top of having like your full-time job, do you still service some of your old freelance clients, even though you're full-time somewhere else?
I do, yeah. So I have, what's cool is I can be more, choosy with it, right? And I'm not having to, I hit a point where I always had this as like a kind of philosophy of mine. I don't want to do something where do it for the money. Obviously, I'm no stranger to the fact, yes, we take money for that, for what we do, right? I'm not going to like say it's all about, the craft and everything. But when my decisions are based on money only, that's just a position I'm trying not to be in, right? So those jobs where I'm like, I'm just going to do this because I have to, right? I don't have as many of those, so it doesn't have that role in my life. And I'm not trying to be everything to everybody, right? So I have a few key clients that I still do some product photography for. And then I pick up some branding projects that either interest me or are just kind of right, a right fit. And what's been cool though is I make iOS and web desktop apps for healthcare, really kind of intricate digital products, right? So, but if I'm doing freelance, I'm doing anything but that. I'm not just at home making more design systems and apps and things like that. So I do still get some creative fulfillment from that. And the product photography isn't the most exciting, but it is a good extra source of income. And even when I took the job I have now in the beginning, before promotion and things like that, I had taken a step back in pay, and I actually needed that freelance to supplement. Like, it wasn't, even though I had that full-time job, it still wasn't meeting the expenses and debt and all those kinds of things that I had.
Gotcha. Yeah, for sure. You got to do whatever you got to do to keep things going.
Yeah. So I still have the freelance. It just takes on a different role in my life. Yeah.
Nice. So, dude, let's get into the struggle, man. Like,
sure, man. Yeah.
Let's get into that. Like, what was that time in your life where that was that monumental point of struggle?
So yeah, I mean, it's right kind of where we left off. I had been working with that YoYoer company doing really cool shit for a long time. It was really awesome, and I enjoyed the work. It was a lot of hours and a lot of hard work. It was kind of a work hard, play hard. I got to travel. I got to do the things. I had the freedom. I got to explore a lot of different creative outlets and design and creative direction with the company. But I needed to
work in an industry that you were into. I think that's a huge thing too, right?
Yeah.
Like, that
happened to be a great fit for that position.
Right. Yeah, it's perfect.
So,
right?
Yeah. So it kept me connected to something that I was passionate about. I really liked it, and at the time when I started, like, the opportunity to change that look of that industry from kiddish and goofy or just not designed, right? To bring it into something more of like action sports and something that looks more reminiscent of, like, where skateboarding branding is at and things like that. So it was really cool. But so the struggle, I think, at one point I was working on site with them, and I had decided I really wanted to go back to doing client work, right? I had this massive portfolio of all this, like, different creative stuff. So I started out going after like toy brands and more fun, brands. And there was a few things that definitely, like, my portfolio definitely had some different toy things and a baby product company and just some other apparel and things like that lend themselves well or kind of pull from that same skill set, right? But there was still that like healthcare was getting, or health insurance was getting a lot more expensive. I had a lot of debt from some health scares when I was in my 20s that, like, thousands of dollars that had just followed me into my, like, 30s, right?
Right.
So there, so I'm working. I have my, like, freedom, right? I have but I don't take working long hours and things like that. So what I was going to be needing was, I needed more money, right? I needed more. I don't want to say job security, because I personally think it's kind of an illusion, right? There's no,
100%.
Especially in our industry, right? But the idea that now I have a 2-week paycheck, right? And there's predictability with it and consistency. So I wanted to go back to having that freelance and trying, different, trying out different, where do I want to be, right? Everybody looked at my portfolio and they're like, oh, you're a packaging guy. And I'm like, well, I'm really branding guy, but it's all in packaging, right? So it was hard to shake that. It was hard to shake the toy thing, especially being here in Phoenix, a lot more, not as much opportunity for that stuff. So I was trying new things. I started working in a co-working space because I was going a little batshit crazy in my home. Just hadn't, I went from working at home for a few years to working on site with literally my friends, right? At this yoga company.
That's cool.
So where now flash forward, I'm married. My wife works as a teacher, and then I'm at home all day, just designing away, right? Or looking for work and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, the struggle really began the business always, anytime I was freelance and had its ups and downs, but like I said, now I'm in, my early 30s. I have no health insurance. I would have health insurance for a little bit, but it would be one of the first things to go when we didn't have, the money or whatever. So, so there was that. And then we were looking into, we're working up to having a kid. Right. So when I was 35, we had our son, and, that's when stuff honestly got really hard. Before that, I'd been doing some freelance, or I had some clients. I had some good successes, and then some low lows. So what it really came down to is every time I'd be like, oh, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. But then those dips would happen. And my biggest problem, my biggest regret or don't do this, whatever, was I set out on this, back in freelance without that saved up net, or without really thinking through the logistics. It was kind of all right, I'm going to do this and I'm just going to push and it's going to get better. So that's kind of when everything started. That's, I was trying all kinds of different things, and I would hit a point where I would go, when things would dip, I would go do contract work through a staffing agency. So some people would be like, oh man, when things get really rough, I could go work something else, right? You asked that earlier, what else would I do?
Right.
And I'm like, honestly, if you're willing to let your pride take a hit, I can slide into a temp job doing design work that's actually pays more than a full-time job, but less than the client work, right? But it's it's a paycheck every 2 weeks, every single week, and then direct deposited and those kinds of things. So those are, as that freelance guy, I'm where you're get the money, get the money, get the money, get the deposit, get the check.
Dude.
Now I can take a breather. And now actually from one of those, I have one of my current clients that I do the product photography from, came out of one of those relationships.
Nice.
Yeah, it's like pizza and beer, man. For me, it kind of came down to even bad pizza is good, or even bad pizza is pizza, even bad beer is pizza is.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Beer. Even bad beer is still beer. Even a production job that you're maybe not as happy with is still a production job. And I was fully capable of doing it because I've been doing my own everything for the last, at that point, 13 years or whatever. So yeah, took a few of those, and then I would get back on my feet and that kind of thing. And I took a job at one of the big corporate retailers that sells pet products here in Phoenix. Worked there for about, they kept renewing the contract, was doing that as a contractor. And that was old. So this is where things shifted. I'm like, all right, I need a big brand, and I need digital. I need more digital. I need to shake that John's the packaging guy, right? So I took on that, where I was doing CRM emails and the website, and then any other random little digital social thing they had. And then that's back to that kind of thing. That's where I was learning how an enterprise level company is doing this stuff, right? Not just me doing little one-offs for my client, little small landing pages, but how is a massive retail site for a several billion-dollar a year company? How does that work on the inside from a design team,
Yeah. So again, you learned on the job.
Exactly. Yeah. So taking those skills that I had from everything else and applying that there. Cause I mean, some of the stuff I was doing honestly was pretty basic. It's not like I had, it wasn't, you know, designing emails, but then what I contributed to that was like, all right, I'm going to help them redo how they do emails. And then that's where I'm going to learn. So it's not that I'm going to go in and then learn what I need to for that job. I'm going to go in and then learn how to make that place better. And that's kind of how I would take that like, grit or whatever from being a solo person for so long and really push that internally and help that push my career and stuff.
Well, yeah, it totally helps you become more well-rounded in what you can offer and your skill set and what you're doing. So, yeah, before you were John, the packaging guy, to, you know, now it's, you know, John, oh, like you do packaging too? Like instead of like the whole like, oh, John's a digital guy or John's a UX guy sort of thing, right? Like the whole roles kind of flipped around.
Yeah, I definitely worked on changing that image, but not in just like an image way, like really changing it with the evidence from it and everything too. So, but you know, reshape my portfolio to include that stuff. So I'm at that place. That contract ends. I had ended it. I had gotten back, you know, started doing, you know, client work. Still looking for a full-time job at this point though. And then that's when I kind of switched. That's when I started doing some agency freelance. And that's where something really changed. That's where I started realizing I'm working with teams. I'm working, you know, I'd worked with you, Matt, on some projects with your agency. And that's where I was like, I liked working on a team. I liked working on projects that were bigger than what I could get with my little company. And that's where I started shifting gears. I'm like, all right, you know, started looking at agencies, started applying. So now I'm applying for jobs, not just these temp gigs and things like that, these stopgaps. But I'm like, all right, I need to rethink, like, as you know, like I said, we're getting into having a kid territory. And then we had a point where my wife was going to no longer work as a teacher, come home, which means I was going to, you know, the insurance and all that stuff was going to be on me. Right. So that was coming up. That was like just over the horizon. Right. So,
were you having a lot of anxiety during that time?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's funny. Those are, yeah. Yeah. And it was a scary, scary time. So I was not having luck with, you know, I'd only started to get the digital stuff in my portfolio, and the feedback I was always hearing was kind of like, well, you haven't worked at an agency before. We need somebody with that, you know, that experience. And I'd make the argument. I'm like, I had my own little tiny one-person agency. I kept it through a recession, right? So there's something to that.
Right.
I've worked with clients, and the people who would call me in for the interview were usually people who had done that themselves and could recognize that value, right? But
cool.
You know, I was striking out, so I was having better luck. I was still being hired as freelance though for the agency, so it wasn't like I couldn't work at an agency. It was just I was getting that through. So I would go and then, you know, still make it meeting the needs with like temporary, you know, over the holidays. There was a one that came up, worked there for like 6 weeks or something like that, and then that was good, you know, good consistent stuff for a while. So I, you know, take those where I could and everything. And meanwhile, I'm networking, learning and growing and everything. And then I go contract back at the pet company. So I go back a 2-month contract, and I'm like, all right, this time I'm serious about it. I'm just fueled by anxiety at this point, to your question. I'm just like fueled by stress, and I'm like, but I'm just like hella laser focused, right? Before I was very much about like, I want my lifestyle, and I want that freedom and all those things from having my own business and everything, or whatever those things represented to me at that time. And now I was just like, I'm like laser focused. I'm like, all right, I'm here. This is a 1 or 2 month contract, and they mean it this time, probably, you know, you can't count. Like last time it just kept going over, and I was fortunate that way. Right. They liked me. But then this time I was like, all right, I got like a month to make this thing stick. So I was able to see what was good, see what was going on. They had got me back. You know, I'd contracted there now twice. They tried to get me when my son was born, but we had gone through all this stuff. I was down to just a scooter with like a 30-mile range, so I couldn't even drive to the job. So I'd even turn them down And so anyway, by their graces, I was back, right? And I got that full-time senior web design position, right? So now I'm like, all right, it's like I could hold that piece of paper up and be like, all right, I have a title given to me by somebody else. It's digital.
It's official.
It's like implied, right? Because in my opinion, the job title you give yourself at an agent at a small company or freelance or whatever is almost. I'm more of a harsh critic, so I feel like I was more proud of the titles that I gave myself because I did not give myself those titles easily. But I knew that the title from the company meant a lot, and that paycheck, right? So I was now making big boy money, right? I could consider the idea of my wife, not working, right? So that was about 10 months. And then just through corporate restructuring and reorg, some stuff happened and I was laid off. And that was the day after my wife had gotten a really bad car accident. Everybody was okay after checking everybody out and everything. Really scary car accident. And then the next day I was laid off. So I lost my job.
You had no car and your scooter.
I know. I think at this point we were back to. I had my. I can't. Honestly, we may have still been down to one car. No, sorry, we had two cars at this time. Yep.
Okay. Cool.
2 cars and a scooter, so we were living it up, right?
I was gonna say, dude, putting that baby seat on the scooter is not gonna work out too much, dude. I've seen that shit in Taiwan, but I don't know if it's gonna fly here.
First of all, actually, I got to set the record straight too. For anybody listening, they're probably picturing me on a Razor scooter or a Bird or whatever. No, man, it was like a Vespa, like a motorcycle scooter, right? Still not cool though. 20 miles an hour. Matt, you know what I'm talking about. So, but I got to.
It's got pedals on it though.
It had pedals, yeah. So it was an e-bike. So, but I wasn't just standing up on a scooter like. So that's what people picture, man. I gotta show people. I gotta show people the picture, so they know it's super cool. Anyway, so we got 2 cars and the scooter. Yeah, so it really scary. Wife gets in an accident. She was rear-ended at full speed by somebody who was having like a medical episode. And then our 1-year-old son, I think at the time, was in the car, right? So we had to after we take him to to get a scan for something just to make sure, because he had some like redness and stuff. Scan, got my wife some like physical therapy and things like that, or started that process that day. And then I tell my wife, I'm like, so people have been blowing me up at work because I called in sick, but my coworkers are telling me it's going down, right? I'm like. So I tell my wife, I'm like, let's get you a rental car, and then I need to take the other car and go to work and get my stuff because I think I'm losing my job tomorrow. So I go ahead and do that. Sure enough, I come in the next day and get the email that I've been chosen. So we had a design team, for the digital team that I was on, 6 people, 2 of us had to go. So did that. I hopped in the car, took my corporate, dismissal packet, whatever. And then what was now starting a whole email thread from the car accident. And I just went straight to the co-working space. I was there by like 10 o'clock and I'm like, all right, I'm back at it. I was trying to be the full-time guy and here we go. So then I'm sifting through, the severance stuff and the car accident stuff, negotiating, I was even fortunate to get what I got from the company after like 10 months, but working through all that stuff, reviewing, because I got to sign stuff, give it back, and then almost the same stuff with the car accident, going through all that and just kind of going, all right, this is what I'm doing right now. That was a really, really hard time. So it was like, so that stretch was all super, super rough. And talk about anxiety and whatever else comes along with that. From the time my son was born. Oh, sorry. But so while I was doing all this, before, to back up, just before my son was born, 1 month before, we were able to sell our house after being 4 months behind on the mortgage. And if we didn't sell it within the days that we did, we would have just lost it. So talk about like fueled by anxiety. So we had, so I had this house that I had since I was 24, and my wife and I got married when I was like 30. And then, we lived there for a while. The value wasn't at a point where we could, I bought it when I was young. I saw it go up, and then I saw it go way down. So we were stuck in a house we didn't want to live in. So we had moved with like super terrible credit and just sell the house in the nick of time with just like cash in hand. Found a place to rent in downtown Phoenix. And we were just like, my credit sucks, but I just sold a house and I have this many dollars, right?
So you came with a briefcase.
Pretty much, man. I wasn't going to pass any kind of like credit check, but we found a private owner who was buying, down to hook it up. Like I was just kind of like, I just had to prove to him. I was just like, look, dude, I've got a kid. It's like my wife was like 8 months pregnant. I'm like, we have that going on. Here's invoices. This is how much I make when I do freelance, right? And this is before the pet, the second pet contract, right? So I just had to convince him that I'm like, dude, I could do this. And we did that and moved in, and then a month later had our son, and then that's when all the crazy like that. Yeah. It's funny. Like I've tried to pinpoint, but it was a pretty long period of like 5 straight years of just struggle, right?
Right. Yeah. And then, so this has been a couple of years now since all this shit went down. What did you get from that whole, what were your takeaways from that whole situation? Like, if you could look back at it now and like apply that to your life now, or apply that to later on in your life.
I'd say, yeah, that's a really good question. So one thing, so where we're at now, I had set this goal at the beginning of all this, that I was like, I'd really identified debt as one thing that was really killing us. So we're actually just this year, we paid off, we're down to 0 debt. Those used, thank you. Those used cars and that scooter, we own them.
Nice.
So, but all the credit card debt, all the medical, all those things, I just worked really just kind of hard to like pay those down. So one, that was a definite big boy goal. That was some adulting right there. I was like, this is how I want to live. Not just like, let's pay this down for now, but I want to, that's like a goal holistically, right? So that was our thing too. We weren't going to try to buy another house, our credit was too shitty, but like, we weren't even going to try it. We're like, let's rent. We don't want any debt, any payment until this is gone. So that was one thing, was just, I guess, learning, setting that goal and then hitting that. Cause through my, like starting my businesses, I wasn't really setting like milestone goals. I was just kind of like, it's just going to get better. Or I'd have a huge win and I'd be like, shit, I wasn't even planning that,
Right.
But anyway, set a big goal. And then over the course of like 5 or 7 years or whatever, finally like paid it off. But, and then other things that I learned, just like one, just having to push super, super hard, and just like definitely learned how hard it can get, right? Definitely learned the shift in priorities from I'm gonna keep running this business to, well, so it had really become kind of like part of my identity. So besides like the kind of design that I did, I not only, besides what people thought of me, I really identified as like, I run a business, right? I am independent. I'm that guy, right? And one takeaway was like, I really had to like change how I thought about that, and not just let how I do, like being a designer is always going to be part of my identity, but how I was doing design, I can't, moving forward, I can't let how I do design or do anything, can't let that become so much part of my identity, because that.
Gotcha, okay. So do you think that was part of like, and not in a negative way, but do you think that was part ego that was driving that?
I think so. Yeah. I think some of it could definitely be ego, right? At some point, at my lowest, right? At my, at my youngest naiveness, I looked down at some point, I looked down on taking a full-time job, right? I was like, no, I can never go back. Right. And then but the opportunity that I had, come into now where I'm at for the last 2 years or so was, all right, this is a chance to like reset and just rethink how I'm doing this and prioritize. I wanted to be there from like a time perspective for my son, right? Well, I also need the money to be able to like have the roof over our heads and the 2 cars and all that jazz.
Right. Yeah.
Driving our like 10-year-old used cars and stuff. So, so I would say one definite takeaway is like how I don't want to let what I'm doing become so much a part of my identity that I can't see straight, or I can't change that. I can't change what I'm doing for the better, right?
Right. Yeah, that's huge, man. Like it's a big realization right there. To just own that
for sure
and grow from that. So
I know that I could be okay. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So would that be kind of your advice to give to your old self?
Yeah. Well, you know what? Yeah, for sure. Don't let that it's not just about the whole life isn't just about this, right? The other advice I would probably give myself is set like objective thresholds and objective like logistics and breaking points and things like that. Like I would get low and then I'd be like lower than I thought I could get, and I'd be like, oh, I just got to pull out of this. But setting objective things to where, hey, no matter what, if it drops below this, whether it's my time or my money or whatever, right? If whatever those things are, set those and like write those down, and then when those happen, acknowledge those. The other thing is to I would get a mentor. That's one thing I did not.
Shit.
Right. That's one thing. I over my course, I mean, obviously there's people I've learned from, but I had friends, but a lot of times they were younger than me or not doing what I'm doing. They thought I was crazy for doing, running, being freelance or not having a job or being my own boss or whatever. So even if I was crazy, if I hear that from somebody who's done it, it makes a difference. And then the other thing would be if I was trying to run a small business, like a small design agency, without having worked full time in an agency. So I would go way back and really push to get that into my skill set before.
So do that first and then do your own thing afterwards. Learn from the job, learn from that experience, and then take what you applied to your own thing.
I took it as, I've learned design, so I can start a business about design. But it's like I'm doing client work, I'm doing agency work. So I learned a lot of things the hard way, right? So
right, yeah, no, exactly.
One thing would have made it easier.
Right, exactly. So before we close out, dude, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on, or any other things you wanted to talk about?
Oh man, I don't know. I guess one thing would be, one of the big differences kind of like from where I was, or, you asked kind of like where is like coming out of that, right? And one thing I've realized is there's the things that inspire you creatively, and then there's the things that sort of drive you. And I've been able to sort of identify the things that kind of like may separate those, So
go into that for a minute. What do you mean by that? The things that inspire you, and then the things that drive you.
Yeah. So like things that inspire me, whether it's to, creatively, right? I have to meet a creative objective, right? I need to make a thing, and I need that inspiration, right? I get that from like music and, other art forms, not necessarily. I want to do logo, so I'm going to go look at logo design. I want to do a layout, so I'm going to go look at layouts. For me, it's more, I look at like off the wall skateboard tricks that have nothing to do with what I'm doing. I like, or something that I don't know anything about, right? Something that is like one thing, if you follow like Red Bull, it's a random thing. If you follow Red Bull, like the content they put out, it's always things that I haven't been exposed to, right? And I'm like, holy shit, like that guy just turned walking into an art form, right? Or whatever the thing, right? Sometimes it's just like crazy jumping out of a plane that doesn't interest me or whatever, but other times it's just, so those things like object manipulation, juggling, obviously with like the yo-yo thing, I'm into the, the skill toys, things like that. But, so those are like inspiring. And then, obviously, stories of other people and things like that. But one thing for me that's been really cool, this kind of like after doing this for 20 years and making a shift, carrying with me all that experience, but definitely going into, I'm not still doing the same stuff I started in. In some ways, in like very high levels, I am still doing design. I'm still solving problems. But one thing that's very different is I'm not in the advertising space right now in my current role. Some of my freelance and things I still do that work in that space, but I'm working in healthcare. I'm solving problems in an industry that desperately needs it, especially right now in obviously like our healthcare crisis that we're having.
Totally.
So one thing that's driving me is just kind of like meaningful work. The idea that what I'm doing is more. It's design, but it touches a lot of people, and it if it gets somebody to the emergency room faster, or it solves something that is usually a pain for them, if I can make that easier, right? That like drive, so that there's obviously inspirational stories and things like that, but there's something definitely that with that kind of drives more than just like, I used to look more for inspiration. Now I'm looking for something to kind of like drive the.
That's cool. That's a good perspective, dude.
So right. It's still a thing, but I've learned that the two are separate.
Yep, exactly. And kind of have those 50-50.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
With that balance. That's cool. Well, dude, this was awesome. Yeah, it was just a lot of fun. Like, of course, reminiscing about certain shit and like,
yeah,
kind of about the old school stuff, but definitely hearing about, the kind of shit that you went through and what had happened. So, and one of the things you talked about was mentorship, right? So if anyone's listening or watching, and they're inspired by your story and want to seek out to you for mentorship, where can they do that?
For sure. Yeah. You can find me at the John Huber on just most social media platforms, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and thejohnhuber.com.
Nice.
And then on that site is the links to everything too. So.
Oh, cool. Awesome. So just go to that one spot and you'll be able to find everything.
Yep.
And if you want to learn yo-yo tricks, just hit them up too. So.
For sure. I'll show yo-yo tricks. Yeah, man. Matt, should we mention that? So Matt had asked me to come on the show, and it's been awesome. Before I did tell Matt that I wanted to come back in a year and interview Matt for Trust Your Struggle, and let Matt tell his story to all of you. So, and Matt agreed. So,
yep.
Yeah.
We're gonna do it.
I'm excited about that.
Role reversal here in a year. So.
Yep.
I'm gonna keep it going too. So we'll be doing that. So we'll get it planned out. So, well, dude, thanks a lot again, man. This was really awesome, and really appreciate you taking your time to sit down and have a conversation.
Cool. Yeah, and thank you so much for having me on here, dude. It was really cool.
Awesome. Thanks, dude.
All right. Talk to you later.